Yeah, no, you can't do that. Anyway, all good. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm doing something a little. I'm using a different setup today, and I know the audio is good. I can see. I actually have a VU meter now, which is really nice, and I can see that the audio is working. If you guys hit me up in the comments, let me know if it sounds good. Um, as soon as I get somebody on, which would be kind of helpful. But anyway, I'm going to start out today. Um, yeah, background images. So setting the scene. So let's be honest. Background image is really kind of important. And right now, I have a backdrop in back of me that is quite specific. Actually, I should move that before, but anyway, that's a whole other thing. Yeah. So I've got a backdrop in back of me that's not too bad. It has some depth to it. These bars and. But let's talk about what makes a good background, because whether you're talking, and the reason I'm doing this today is because we were talking about a few things that would use backgrounds, not the least of which is photo books. Photo books, you can actually put background images on the page, which is super handy. A good background for a presentation, a desktop for your to customize your desktop the way you want it. Those are all like really great reasons to have a good background. It also helps to know what makes a good background and why it's important. So the other thing is we're going to also talk like if you're thinking in terms of theater production, or if you want to have an image that's a background for your Zoom call where you're using green screen and have a good background. So all of these things are places where a good background makes all the difference, and it really does make a huge amount of difference. Yes, by the way, I am dressed fairly casual today. Look, I'm a casual kind of guy. I put on the shirts and whatnot, and that's great. But today it was hot and humid, and incredibly hot and humid, and I figured, you know what, we're just gonna, kick this off. I'm using a different setup as well because I'm doing something. I'm using the wireless mic because I'm gonna try and do some different stuff. I mean, look, I'm always trying to evolve this, right? So yeah. Background images, yes. Aside from my tangent, background images. So this is actually a decent background image. Well, what makes it a decent background image? Well, first of all, there is something dynamic or interesting to it, and it has negative space. I am currently standing in the negative space. I can always stand over here, and you'll see this wall here, for example, is generally quite blank, which means that if I'm standing in it, it now provides a decent backdrop for me and has an interesting visual element. Also, to these bars, as you can see, I'm moving my hand. I'm actually here because of the lighting. It actually adds some depth, which gets really interesting. So let's show you an example of a really bad background and kind of contrast. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to turn on my mobile setup, or my virtual cameraman, and I'm going to go over this way. So this is an example of a really terrible background. What makes it a terrible background? Well, there's great depth. The depth is good. The pillar, not so much. But what really makes it a bad one is, first of all, there's a lot going on. There's too much going on. There's too much visual element here. So it doesn't really help because where do I stand out? Even if I stand a little closer, do I stand out from this background? Really? Yeah, well, with this shirt, everything stands out. But to be honest, let's call it what it is. This background is too busy. And it has a lot of very high contrast points. The red chair, the white desk, the black bookshelf with all of these colors on it. It's not only busy, but highly contrasty. And it doesn't really do much for you. By the way, this is my apartment. So you know what? I'm going to show you a little bit about me too. So coming back, and let me switch that off here. There we go. So that's what makes a really poor background. If you're looking at background images, you want to choose something that is you want it kind of like fashion. You don't want too many colors. You don't want too many textures at once, because if you have too much, the eye doesn't know where to track. You are the most important element on your own background, or in the case of a computer background, and I have a cat behind me, don't I? Yes, I do. In the case of a computer background, the icons need to stand out from against the background. So you don't want something that is overly, okay. You don't want something that is overly busy, overly contrasty or overly colorful. Something that's way too colorful tends to distract from what you need. You also don't want something with too many or too complex visual elements. I mean, that's busy, but if you're actually generating a background, a single drop, like a drop into a bucket or a glass of milk that causes a splash, causes this really, really great dynamic shadow, and it gives this real, like if you get a good photo of it, you get the real depth to it, and it really makes a great background. Why? Because milk is white. And let's be honest, that counts for something. That takes away that overindulgence in color and that over contrast. You will get a cool image. Even a paint drop in a single color. And you may want to take the saturation of it down a little bit so that the color isn't quite as punchy, depending on what you're going to put in front of it. Like you don't want a can of red paint that's just completely overwhelming the screen, right? Factor in negative space. If it's a presentation, imagine your text on a busy background, that makes it really hard to read. So a simple background, even video games, by the way, consider this rule. The backgrounds or skybox usually have a bit of haze. They usually have lower contrast. The clouds are there, but they're not so vivid. They're enough that you recognize them for what they are, and they look pretty, but not enough that it distracts from the foreground elements that you really need to be paying attention to, because that's where the game is happening, is in the foreground. So that's what really makes a good background. So let's kind of just run over that real simple. Not too colorful. Not too many elements or too busy. You don't want it to have too much texture. You want to have some, but not too much. If you have a background that is more colorful, favor something with less texture. If you have something with much more texture, favor less color, and you'll want to bring the contrast of it down. So you might gray your image out a bit, or you may suppress some of that, richness, but that's okay. It's a background. You're supposed to. What you want to stand out in the front is obviously what you want to show off. The background is merely just a nice visual element that cues people in. It can also help in terms of setting the scene. If I'm talking about something happy and I have, party balloons, again, I might take the saturation down a little bit. I want to make sure that it's not overly punchy, but something fun that, like a close-up on like 2 or 3 balloons where I have just that nice lighting and they're not so like in your face, or like there's not like 60 balloons or even 20 balloons. That would be a great backdrop, like 2 or 3 balloons that kind of get that little bit of festive across. And then I could talk about something happy. And then if I go to something a little more somber, I might put a rainy day where it's grayed over. That, of course, is naturally low contrast. And again, I don't want to have too many buildings or too much that is, right in your face. If you guys have any questions on this, if you guys want to run some backgrounds by me, if you guys want to, let me know. If you want some good examples of great background images, I use Unsplash. It's actually free, and all the stuff on Unsplash are great photographers, but it's all royalty free. It's meant to go, and all you have to do is credit the photographer. So Unsplash, unsplash.com, check it out. There are some fabulous, fabulous, fabulous images on there, and you can use them for backgrounds for your presentation or slideshow or website. Don't forget websites. Backgrounds are great for websites. And check it out. You'll see the ones that appeal, the ones that look almost a little bit bland, like as their own image. They don't stand alone as their own image, but if you put some text on that, man, does that really pop, So anyway, I leave you with that. Again, if you have any questions, if you want to know anything more, if you're working on a project and you want to, if you want to just talk your project through, here's my email. You can go to rstrother.com. That's the website. Come on, check it out. And yes, I do have a photo book course, online course coming up on mastermind.com. That should be out in the next month or so. So I will talk about it here, and it will be available. There will be a link through the website as well. Thanks for watching. Can't wait to see you guys tomorrow live at 6:45 for Not Technically Perfect with me, Richard Struther. Have a great evening.